On November 22, 1963, the world witnessed a pivotal moment in history with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas. But what if the bullets had missed their mark, and JFK had survived that fateful day? Join us as we embark on a journey into the speculative realms of history, exploring the possibilities and potential consequences of a world where John F. Kennedy lived beyond that tragic moment. On that fateful day in Dallas, the Zapruder film captured the shocking and tragic moments that altered the course of history. President John F. Kennedy, riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza, became the target of an assassin's bullets. The nation watched in disbelief as the events unfolded, forever marking November 22, 1963, as a day of profound sorrow. Had JFK survived that day in Dallas, the trajectory of the 1960s and beyond would have been dramatically different. The first thing that would have drastically changed is that the political landscape of the 1960s would have been reshaped. Kennedy, with his charisma and vision, might have continued to navigate the complexities of the Cold War and the struggle for civil rights. Lyndon B. Johnson would very likely have never been president, with JFK running for the 1964 presidency. There are plenty of rumors and investigations surrounding Kennedy's alleged ties to the mob, affairs, and political secrets. Due to any combination of these things coming to light, Kennedy may have lost the 1964 election. Or worse yet, gone down the path that Nixon would about 10 years later. Rather than being a loved and respected president, Kennedy's legacy could be drastically different. Next, we have to look at the war in Vietnam. And in the backdrop of escalating tensions in Vietnam in 1963, President John F. Kennedy found himself entangled in a complex web of decisions. Mere months before his tragic assassination, Kennedy lent support to a coup that resulted in the death of South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem. The aftermath of this political maneuver fueled speculation about Kennedy's stance on Vietnam. However, the posthumous statements by Kennedy's brother, Robert, introduced a different perspective. After JFK's death, Robert Kennedy informed reporters that his brother had no intention of withdrawing from Vietnam. This conflicting account adds a layer of uncertainty, leaving historians grappling with the question of how the Vietnam War might have unfolded under Kennedy's continued leadership. Historians often blame President Johnson for many of United States' failings in Vietnam. Would the world blame JFK instead? Or would the stronger Kennedy have made decisions to remove the USA from the war? Or would he have claimed decisive victories to end the war earlier? The civil rights movement, as we know it, also might look quite different. While President Kennedy was ardently committed to advancing civil rights, progress on his civil rights bill remained sluggish in Congress at the time of his untimely death. Anticipating a challenging re-election campaign due to his staunch support for civil rights, Kennedy, in taped recordings with his advisers, acknowledged the political hurdles he faced. This has spurred speculation among historians, pondering whether Kennedy would have deferred action on the civil rights bill until after securing re-election, hoping for increased leverage in Congress. In this hypothetical scenario, even with enhanced political influence in Congress, it is widely acknowledged that a Kennedy-led administration would likely have encountered numerous challenges and necessitated significant concessions to navigate the legislative process, perhaps even more so than under Johnson's formidable leadership. Lyndon B. Johnson ascended to the presidency with a commanding presence and an adept understanding of how to navigate the intricacies of Congress. Despite lacking Kennedy's charismatic television presence, Johnson wielded unparalleled political influence. The 1964 elections further solidified Democratic control, a political landscape that might not have materialized had Kennedy not been assassinated. Johnson, driven by a commitment to honoring Kennedy's memory, skillfully leveraged his negotiation prowess and the Democratic majority to push the Civil Rights Act through without substantial compromise. Without Johnson's forceful leadership, lacking the Democratic majority, and therefore without Kennedy's tragic death, the passage of the Civil Rights Act in the timeframe it did is deemed unlikely. This hypothetical scenario raises the spectre of prolonged civil unrest in America during the tumultuous decades of the 60s and 70s, as the crucial legislation might not have been enacted without the unique circumstances that unfolded in the wake of Kennedy's assassination? And finally, could the Cold War have ended sooner with under JFK's leadership? Kennedy, a fervent anti-communist, found himself on the brink of nuclear catastrophe during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, heightening initial suspicions that, had he not been assassinated, he might have further escalated the Cold War, particularly given the escalating tensions over Vietnam. Contrary to this assumption, most historians argue that a significant shift occurred in Kennedy's approach after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Confronted with the perilous brinkmanship that nearly led to global devastation, Kennedy adopted a more cooperative stance towards the Soviets. In a pivotal 1963 speech delivered in Washington, Kennedy emphasized peace between the United States and the Soviet Union, advocating for a limited ban on nuclear weapons. Later that year, addressing the United Nations General Assembly, he proposed a joint manned lunar program with the Soviet Union. Kennedy questioned the need for the first moon landing to be a matter of national competition, suggesting that collaboration between the Soviet Union, the United States, and their allies could lead to agreements based on shared interests in preventing mutual destruction. Considering these diplomatic overtures, it is plausible that had Kennedy remained in power, Cold War tensions might have de-escalated well before they did. Relations with Cuba could have thawed, avoiding the prolonged period of estrangement witnessed in our timeline. There is even speculation that the world might have witnessed both a Soviet and an American astronaut walking on the moon for the first time together in 1969. The alternate narrative proposes a world where Kennedy's diplomatic initiatives, born from the shared realization of the dangers of nuclear brinkmanship, could have reshaped the trajectory of Cold War relations and global collaboration, ushering in an era of de-escalation and cooperation sooner than the course history ultimately took. As we close the pages of this speculative exploration, we're left with the profound realization that history, with all its intricacies, is shaped by the unpredictable interplay of moments and decisions. The what-if surrounding JFK's survival invites us to contemplate the delicate balance between fate and the course of nations. Join us in our ongoing journey through the corridors of alternate history, where the past is ever shifting, and the narratives are as diverse as the imagination allows.